Good evening, participants. My name is Colleen, and on behalf of DGS CIMB Securities Singapore, thank you for joining us today. We are here this evening to gain insights on how the exchange-traded funds, ETF in short, work, and how you can use ETF to achieve your diversification objective. During the session, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to raise them in the Q&A function that you see on your Zoom platform. We will do our best to answer most, if not all, of the questions after the presentation by our speaker tonight. So for this evening webinar, we will begin with a short introduction to ETF, followed by a discussion of market outlook and how investors can reposition themselves during the time of uncertainty, before we end off the session with Q&A. A little background of the speaker tonight. Mr. Jeremy Ng has more than 10 years of experience in the financial markets, having worked in various broking firms. He focuses on the global macro, tracking the long-term trend, and employs technical analysis to time the entry and exit of the market. He is also the person behind our research report, Transporter for the US and the Singapore market, which is published on our trading platform as well as platforms like the Bloomberg Terminal. So without further ado, I will hand the time over to Jeremy. Jeremy, please.
All right, thanks, Colleen, again for the introduction. And a very good evening to everyone, and thanks again for joining today's webinar. My name is Jeremy, and I'm the market strategist at the Singapore research team. So again, mainly covering global macro side of things as well as technical analysis. But for today, we'll be covering something that is slightly different. We'll be discussing more in terms of giving investors, the listeners, some idea of what an ETF is, an exchange traded fund is, and basically how you should actually kind of diversify up from the equity exposure and probably look into some other asset class, especially during this time of rising uncertainty, where we are talking about this new normal where we are in this COVID-19 pandemic, as well as this particular new global suppressed interest rate kind of environment. So that will be the kind of the main gist for today's topic, mainly revolving around exchange traded funds. So a disclaimer over here. And for today, the topic that I would like to cover will kind of revolve around these three key points. The very first part of today's webinar will be covering on what an ETF is, basically give you a 101 introduction on what ETF is and key things to look out for when you are investing in an ETF. And then last but not least, at the end, we'll kind of show you some standard in terms of how you should actually look out in terms of diversifying a portfolio. Splitting not just 100% into an equity kind of exposure, but looking into uncorrelated asset class such as treasury bonds as well as gold, to add them into your portfolio to kind of smoothen out your risk profile, especially in terms of heightened uncertainty as well as increased volatility. And then last but not least, we'll be covering slightly a little bit more on the market outlook, and then probably give you a good feel on what probably is to come in the next coming few months, and then again how you should kind of look out for in terms of diversifying your portfolio using strategies such as ETFs. So let's just jump straight into it. So the very first slide that I'd like to go through is basically explaining what an ETF is. Basically, ETF is an exchange traded fund. Basically, it's something similar to like a stock that you kind of see day to day within the stock exchange that is being traded during the market hours. But instead of it just being a single stock out there that you trade, ETF usually is a basket of stocks that kind of is being packaged within the ETF, and it's being traded as though like it's a stock. So probably just bring our attention to this particular bottom image here. So you can see I've kind of thrown out some of the US listed stock here, and then a basket over here. So you can just imagine an ETF being a basket of stocks So for this case, these are actually the top 10 stocks within the S&P 500 index. And what we do over here is that the ETF actually bundles these top 500 stocks within the US equity in this equity market, and then kind of throw them into this basket whereby just by buying one unit of this ETF, you can actually gain an exposure of 500 stocks within this particular index. So that is just the main gist of what a normally functioning ETF would look like. Basically, it mimics an index. So for this case, the example that I would like to draw across is the S&P 500 index, which is basically the top 500 stocks within the US market. So there is actually no way that you can directly kind of invest within this S&P 500 index itself. The only way is kind of replicating the 500 stocks yourself. And by doing so, the number one disadvantage is a cost. It will cost you a lot by individually buying into this 500 stocks. And at the same time, for you to kind of proportionally weigh these 500 stocks to the likes of the S&P 500 index, it is also another main trouble that investors will have if you try to replicate it yourself. And another key disadvantage is by replicating this portfolio yourself, you incur way more costs in terms of buying each and every one unit of the stock will cost you quite a bit of money just for you to invest in that 500 stocks if you were to replicate that portfolio. So henceforth, the reason why we kind of suddenly see this kind of outburst in terms of emergence with ETF is it allows you that shortcut in terms of gaining this exposure for this index. So it kind of gives you this vehicle to kind of invest within an index. And basically by just buying one unit of this particular ETF, say for instance, the State Street Spider S&P 500 ETF, ticker code SPY, which is like the go-to name in terms of an ETF if you want to gain exposure within the US market. Most investors would know this SPY. So right now, I think SPY trades at around $325. So what it means is that with a minimum sum of just one unit, you can actually just spend $325 just by buying one unit of SPY, and it allows you to get an exposure of 500 stocks within the S&P 500 index, which by itself also gives you the diversification feature of having to be vested into an index. So instead of just stock picking just a handful of 5 to 10 stock, which by itself has some concentration risk, investing within a passive index such as the S&P 500 index through SPY ETF by itself already solves that particular problem of diversification. So just to sum up what an ETF is, the most common kind of ETF is a index ETF, which basically tracks an index ETF such as the S&P 500 index. And again, by itself gives you a shortcut to kind of just buying into one unit of the SPY, and then by itself giving you an exposure of 500 diversified stocks kind of a portfolio, rather than replicating the portfolio yourself, which is pretty high cost. So just keep that in mind. That is the more common type of ETF that we see usually right now in the market, an index ETF. In the following slide, I will share more in terms of the other kinds of ETF and some of the more trendier ones that are gaining traction. But right now, in the first part, I will just run through more within the equity kind of side of things for the ETF. Moving back to our local market, so the previous slide I've shown an example of the US market ETF, the SPY, which is the S&P 500 index ETF. But if we were to move back into a domestic market, and if investors would like to kind of gain some exposure within the local markets, the index that actually tracks this Singapore market is actually the Straits Times Index. And again, like I said, there is no direct way to actually get an exposure into the index itself. The only way is to actually buy the 30 stocks here, which is pretty costly. So this ETF alone kind of gives you the shortcut to kind of get the exposure within the STI. So this particular ETF, Nikko AM Singapore STI ETF, ticker code G3B, basically tracks this particular STI index. Again, basically the proxy for the Singapore market, and it only costs you a total expense ratio of 0.3% annually. And probably I'd just like to run through again the STI. So when you invest in an STI, some things to take note of is particular what you are investing in. So for STI, you can see these are the top holdings, top 10 holdings, and basically the sector allocation here. And mainly for the STI, it's pretty much a heavy banking financial side of things, whereby we're talking about good 38 to 40% that's being weighted within just DBS, UOB, as well as OCBC. So the reason why we are probably seeing some sort of underperformance here within the Singapore market, the STI, as compared to the other global equity market, is because the Singapore banking sector isn't really doing that well currently. And probably you can see real estate is also holding around 22% of the STI component, followed by industrial, which is also not doing really that well for Singapore market. So henceforth, right now, Singapore market, the STI is still down. Probably last check is more than 20% down year to date, which is still qualified itself being in a bear market. So probably just drawing some parallels here between what we are seeing here in terms of the performance from the US market, the SPY, this particular row here, as compared to the STI ETF here, G3B. You can see the performance is pretty stuck here. Kind of a divergence here where you can see the SPY annualized return on different horizon, 1 year out, 3 year out, 5 year out. You're talking about pretty consistent return for the SPY of around 10% each year, moving from different horizon, 1 year out, 3 year out, 3 years out. And then if you were to look in terms of the STI performance, it's pretty in the opposite manner where you can see year to date is down 20%, 1 year out still in the bear market 20% down. And moving further up along the time horizon, 3 years out and 5 years out, we are talking about 5 years negative performance and 0.9% negative performance on an annualized basis, moving back to 3 years and 5 years time frame. So you can see just by broadening your horizon in terms of your investable horizon, not just looking into the localized kind of economy, probably investors should kind of seek out in terms of looking at investment outside of Singapore, and probably look into something like the global market, such as US market, which kind of offers pretty consistent return over a long-term 10 years, 20 years horizon, annualized return of around 8 to 10%, which I'll highlight in a while. But just to keep in mind, this slide just like to highlight what we are seeing here in terms of the Singapore market, the equivalent ETF that we can actually track the Singapore Straits Times Index. And then moving on in terms of explaining, again, the shortcut of getting a diversification feature just directly investing into an ETF. So you can see I've plotted here, this particular chart here, to show you the kind of a feature of what an index does offer as well as an ETF in terms of a diversification feature. So you can see here is the top panel, shows you the STI year-to-date performance. Right now it's down around 22% as of August closing price. But again, if an investors were to randomly or choose just kind of handpick a portfolio of 3 stocks equal weighted. So for this case, I've kind of pick probably just UOB, Thai Beverage as well as SATS. You can see this is the relative performance for these 3 stocks year to date. UOB being down 24%, Thai Bev being down 29%, and then SATS being the worst one, 40%. If unfortunately an investors were to pick just these 3 stocks and equal weight them, and just having these 3 stocks as their portfolio, you can see in terms of equal weighted loss, this portfolio will be down around 31% year to date. And that shows you again the concentration risk over here, whereby just handpicking a handful of stocks, 3 to 5 stocks, or even 10 stocks. If you were to pick the wrong stocks, you can see the downside here is definitely, or I would say the concentration risk is there. And you can see if you were to diversify your portfolio by kind of getting into just an index that holds anywhere more than 30 stocks. For this case, STI holding 30 stocks, you can see itself, it already kind of gives you some sort of a diversification. The downside isn't really as bad, negative 22% as being down negative 31%. So again, this slide is just to highlight the kind of a feature that an index and then an ETF that tracks an index offers, which is the immediate diversification feature, whereby the ETF usually holds more than 30 stocks. And theoretical study shows that for a portfolio to kind of minimize the idiosyncratic risk as much as it can, usually a portfolio should hold at least more than 25 to 30 stocks. So that by itself fulfills the diversification feature over here, which most ETF would actually kind of offer, whereby it usually holds more than 30 stocks or more. So for STI, it holds 30 stocks. You can see the S&P 500 index holds 500 stocks, NASDAQ 100 holds 100 stocks, so on and so forth. And most of the indexes out there usually holds more than 50 stocks or more. So again, by getting into an index ETF, usually they already kind of minimize the idiosyncratic risk by itself. And again, offering you the diversification feature over there. So keep in mind, diversification is a key feature for index ETF, which is what we are looking out for, especially for investors that don't really have time to do their homework in terms of due diligence and kind of doing the stock pick, which is time consuming. So easy way out is actually to park your money into an index ETF, which is passively being managed by a fund manager, and usually offers again the diversification feature. Moving on, key things to look out for an ETF. So right now, I think giving you some context of the S&P 500 Index ETF, the SPY, as well as the local STI Index ETF, the G3B. Right now, for newcomers or for those that are probably new to ETF, when you are interested in any ETF out there, probably here are three most important things for investors to look out for. Firstly, the investment objective, mainly why you are actually investing in this particular investment or this ETF. So first thing is to look out for what this ETF is investing in, mainly its mandate, the reason why you are actually interested in this ETF. So usually what we would do is kind of Google the particular ETF that you are interested in and go to its landing page and look into its fact sheet. So this is what a fact sheet would probably look like, mainly telling you its key feature and its investment objective. So for this case, you can see the SPDR S&P 500 Index ETF, the SPY. It will tell you its main objective here. Basically, what it shows is that this SPY ETF seeks to provide investment results that use the performance of the S&P 500 Index. So telling you straight up that this particular ETF would track its return of the S&P 500 Index, which again, having the objective is to kind of follow a diversified large cap US index that holds companies across 11 sectors. And in terms of the diversification feature, you can see it kind of spans across 24 industry groups there to show you exactly how broadly this index is invested in, again, highlighting the diversified kind of a structure for an index ETF. So again, key thing number one, when you're looking out for index ETF, what we want to look out for is actually investing into an ETF, knowing what you're investing in. And then after which is to look into the top holdings the ETF is holding. So by scrolling down into the fact sheet, you would probably see this particular list here, the fund top holdings. Usually the funds will actually show you the top 10 holdings over here. So just by looking at what the fund is holding, we can roughly gauge in terms of the exposure it's holding. So for this case, you can see the SPY, the top 5-6 holdings over here mainly encompasses Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google. And you can see this 5 stocks over here mainly comprise somewhere around 22% of the S&P 500 index. So you can see there is some concentration risk here or some bias in terms of it being slightly tiered towards the tech side of things. But nonetheless, you can see it's still within the major large cap corporate out there that is kind of diversified because you're talking about companies that are doing businesses internationally. So regardless, S&P whole 500 stocks, again, shows you how diversified it is. And first thing, this will tell you exactly what it's investing in. And after knowing what you're investing in within an ETF, the next thing to look out for is an expense ratio. Basically, what the fund would charge you in terms of running the ETF on an annual basis. So on a ballpark figure, anything below 0.3% would be considered low. So for this case, you can see the expense ratio for S&P 500 index is around 0.0945%, which is pretty low in terms of what the other funds are actually charging outside. So knowing how much you're being charged is also important. And the third point that investors should look out for is actually this thing called tracking error. So basically it shows you how much deviation this particular ETF is moving away from the underlying index that is tracking. So you can see over here, the SPY shows you a tracking error of negative 0.07%, which is pretty close to what the index is tracking. So we would like to have a tracking error that is probably something along this range, nothing more than 0.3%, I would say. That gives you almost a good kind of a tracking movement to the underlying index. So for instance, when the S&P 500 index is actually up 1% today, what we like to see is actually the SPY actually also replicating that 1% move itself on a day, kind of giving you the full exposure of what the index is actually doing. And then last but not least, probably is to look out for ETF that are being managed by a reputable fund. What we're talking about is a kind of a go-to name, State Street, iShares, Vanguard, BlackRock, Invesco, ProShares, VanEck, Direction, so on and so forth. So these are some of the more well-known fund managers, fund management companies out there. So when you are looking in terms of investing in ETF, we would like to kind of be looking towards ETF that are being kind of originated by this particular fund management companies. And especially right now where we are in a new age where ETF is starting to become pretty hot, there's actually a lot of new ETF that's being popping up that is kind of a flowing towards more thematic based kind of ETF. So some of these thematic based ETF are probably more illiquid. So when you're investing in this new ETFs, again, look out for who the fund management company is as well as liquidity when you're investing in all these new ETFs. But right now, again, key focus here is probably look in terms of probably the top highly traded AUM ETF just to get a start in terms of probably in terms of getting into the investment sphere. So after going through that kind of 4 factors that I've just mentioned, probably the last thing that you should be looking out for is the fund performance. Again, just to get a gauge in terms of what the fund has been performing like, going back in time, say 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years time frame, what is the kind of a return profile like, and then roughly give a gauge of moving forward, what sort of return you should be expecting to get. Even though past performance is not really a guarantee for future results, what we like to see is at least a consistent kind of a return profile, like what the S&P 500 index has been kind of showing. At least you can see this is the SPY performance. You can see going all the way back to inception date of 1993, and then different time period. You can see pretty much consistent positive return for the SPY, 9.6% since its inception, 1993. And if you were to segregate back in terms of different time period, if you were to look at the annualized return, moving back 10 years ago, it's 13% annualized return. 5 years return, 3 years return, 1 year return, respectively, you can see it's pretty much in the range of 11%, pretty decent. And even throughout this period of a pandemic, since March, you can see the year-to-date return for the SPY is currently still positive as of year-to-date and closing of July 2020. So this is the kind of return profile that we would like to see, at least showing that there is actually a positive, consistent return that the equity ETF is actually showing. And again, showing you some past historical return will give you a kind of a sensing in terms of what to expect for moving forward. And probably this is some sort of a benchmark that I think investors should look out for when choosing an ETF. This consistent return of at least 5% or more. So moving on, explaining some key things to look out for in the prior slide for an ETF. Right now, we'll be just talking about what the benefits are for investing in an ETF. So kind of explain in terms of ETF, giving you, again, the very shortcut, low-cost way to kind of get an exposure within a basket of stocks. A basket of stocks, like I mentioned, more than 30 stocks, more than 50 stocks, like usually what index would track. STI holding more than 30 stocks, S&P holding more than 500 stocks, so on and so forth. So again, the low-cost feature, like I mentioned, the SPY right now trades at around $325. What it means is that just by putting in $325, you can actually hold 1 unit of the SPY. And by doing so, you can actually get an exposure of 500 stocks within the US market. So again, by that, you can by itself achieve the diversification feature over there, rather than if you were to actually go out and try to replicate buying the 500 stocks within the S&P 500 index, it would definitely cost you more than $325. And at the same time, not factoring in the commission cost that's involved there. And at the same time, giving you the problem to kind of replicate the proportion of weightage for the individual stocks that are 500 stocks, such as the top 5 FANG stocks having 25% weightage, so on and so forth. And then probably the other benefits for getting into an ETF is the ability to kind of gain exposure outside of just equity focused ETF. And we are talking about kind of looking into investing into uncorrelated assets outside of the equity side of things, and mainly covering things that are uncorrelated, such as gold, treasury bonds, which I'll cover in a while within our diversified portfolio. So that is another benefit of an ETF, whereby it gives you exposure outside of equity markets. And then another interesting ETF that I would like to talk about is Invest ETF. So Invest ETF is slightly trickier. It's synthetically formed using derivative. But basically what it does is it allows investors to kind of hedge their portfolio in terms of turmoil, such as COVID-19 pandemic in February and March of this year, where we saw the market actually sold off pretty scarily more than 30 to 40% within a short time span of 1 to 2 months. What the Invest ETF does is actually it allows you to gain inverse exposure to what the underlying index is doing. So for example, this particular ETF called the SH, what it does is actually it's an inverse ETF to the S&P 500 index ETF. And what it does is it allows you to have a inverse bet on what the S&P 500 index is doing. So for instance, during the March sell-off of the S&P 500 index, when we saw S&P fell actually around 20-30%, by getting into the Invest ETF, what it does is actually when the market fell 20-30% during that particular period, this Invest ETF actually gives you the positive return when the market is actually falling, thereby giving you the inverse kind of a bet to the underlying index. So again, this is more for sophisticated investors that would like to time the market or to hedge their position. If they have an exposure of individual underlying stocks, say within the FANG stocks in the US, they can actually employ this Invest ETF to kind of minimize their drawdown during times of kind of a turmoil, whereby the upside gain from this Invest ETF will offset the losses within the FANG stocks. So that is also another key benefit of ETF, where it offers you this avenue of getting into an inverse bet of what a passive index is actually showing. So something of an interesting kind of a snapshot here. Key thing that I kind of saw recently is, do you know that there's actually more than 7,000 ETF that's currently listed globally? And we're talking about huge sum, 7,000 ETFs globally, while individually listed stocks in the US that's actively traded, there's only around 3,500 of them. So you're talking about more than 2 times active stocks ETF in terms of that's tracking right now booming in the market, which shows you exactly how probably the market is moving into an active trading kind of environment, into a passive environment, where more and more fund management companies are kind of giving you the option to kind of get into different teams, different sectors, different avenues of investing into a basket of stocks, rather than actually getting into individual stocks here, where again, there's only 3,500 listed stocks that's actively traded in the US, while on the opposite end, you can see there's actually more than 7,000 listed ETFs globally. So interestingly, I think ETF is right now exploding. So probably that will be the next frontier, which I'll explain more in terms of more interesting ETF that is popping up in the later slide. So just hang on with me. So explaining that few list of characteristics in terms of ETF, what they are, key things to look out for, the benefits of ETF. We'd just like to cover some types of ETFs out there. These are the list of more popular, more common ETFs that are kind of listed globally. So index ETF, like I mentioned, the past few slides that I'll just explain, they are all basically passive index tracking ETF, like the SPY, the G3B, and basically what it does is they replicate the performance of a specific index. For example, over here, if you want to track the performance of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a good ETF to actually employ in is actually the SPDR Dow Jones Industrial Average ETF DIY. So these are more of the common ETF that's being commonly traded. More of the highest AUM trading ETF. Usually they are the ones that actually track the index. But if we were to kind of move subset down from a top-down basis approach, following after index ETF, we can actually split into country-specific ETF, which basically invest in equity markets in a different geographic. So for instance, if you are interested in the Chinese market, there's actually ETF that actually tracks the Chinese market, Japanese market, European market, so on and so forth, Singapore market. So for investors that have a better understanding on, probably have a gut feeling that probably Chinese market is right now doing better because of the economic recovery, that is way faster due to it coming out from COVID-19 earlier than the rest of the country, they can actually use an ETF that tracks the Chinese market and probably gain an exposure within the Chinese equity market using the ETF. I have a slide that shows you a list of country ETF in the following slide, so just bear with me. I'll show that in a while. And once we have kind of get to the understanding on country ETF, and say you have an inkling that probably US is the place to be, and you want to kind of gain an alpha, you want to gain a better return than just getting into the S&P 500 index, which just tracks the US market. You can actually go deeper within sector-based or industry-based ETF, which then goes into individual sectors and individual industry, such as technology, utilities, consumer staples, as well as defense, as well as consumer discretionary sector, that you can actually gain a more kind of a concentrated bet within different sectors. So for sector investing, it's more for, I think, investors that have a better understanding on where the cycles are in terms of the economic expansion. So for instance, quick, I would say a tidbit advice, a quick tip is for sectors that are doing well in terms of post-cyclical economy growth. We're talking about technologies, consumer discretionary, as well as healthcare. Usually those are the ones that do well within the booming part of the economy. But when we are talking about economy that are moving into more of a defensive stance, sectors that probably tend to do well will be utilities, consumer staples, and as well as REITs. So again, those are more for investors that have a better understanding and better following on where the economy is. And you can actually deploy more in terms of being overweight within individual sectors to kind of gain an alpha and edge in terms of outperforming what the S&P 500 index is actually doing. And then moving up away from equity index ETF, the different set of ETFs that tracks outside of equity exposure. Firstly, I'll talk about is bond ETF, which basically tracks fixed income, basket of bonds from government, such as treasury bonds, municipal bonds, as well as even corporate bonds. So usually these are the asset class that is slightly safer than equities. And usually treasury bonds have inverse correlation to the equity performance of an index. So usually we will probably use this as part of the diversified kind of asset class to gain a diversified portfolio, bond ETF, as well as the next set, commodity ETF, which tend to invest in the physical commodities such as gold, silver, oil, even agriculture such as soybean, wheat, as well as natural resources such as palm oil, so on and so forth. So almost anything that you can think under the sun that you would be interested in, even sugar, even coffee beans, those are actually available for you to gain an exposure if you're interested in terms of form of an ETF. In terms of commodity, there are other interesting commodities such as lumber, which has been doing pretty crazily over the past 6 months. Iron ore, steel, if you have a good understanding that probably we are coming out of this particular COVID-19 pandemic and we are in the early stage of a V-shaped recovery, those are usually the kind of a commodity, the base commodity that will tend to do well, such as iron ore as well. So if you're interested, there is almost avenue of all these ETFs that are available out there that can give you the exposure of all these underlying commodities. And then moving on to another set of ETF that gives you probably in terms of exposure that's again not so much correlated to the equity market, currency ETF, which gives you exposure of a single currency or even a basket of currencies such as the US dollar, the euro dollar, the pound, the Japanese yen. And the most common ETF for tracking the US dollar is this ETF ticker code called UPP. So yeah, if you're interested in getting some bet in terms of being bullish on the US dollar, you can look up in terms of the ETF called UPP. And then last but not least, the inverse ETF that I just talked about in the previous slide, which utilizes derivatives that gives you the inverse bet on a specific index, such as the S&P 500 index, such as ProShares ETF here, SH. which, for instance, when the S&P 500 index is up, say, down 3%, what this inverse ETF does is it offers you the inverse return here. When the S&P 500 index is down 3%, this inverse ETF will be up 3%. So it's more towards investors that have a view that probably we are moving into a stage of correction right now. Probably the market right now is in super extremely overbought, extremely overvalued kind of a scenario. Probably then they can actually employ this set of ETF, SH, to kind of gain an advantage, gain and profit during the period of market turmoil. So right now we'll just run through some of the more commonly traded ETF, or at least the more traded ETF around the world. So the first one that we'll talk about is an index ETF. Again, like I've shown again, this is the S&P 500 Index ETF, which I guess most investors would have heard about, SPY. Basically, the go-to name for the US market, which gives you the exposure of largest 500 companies in the US, spanning across 24 different industry groups again, which tells you that it's pretty much diversified with an expense ratio of 0.0945%. So you can see I highlighted here in terms of what this chart shows, give you a good feeling on the performance here. The blue line shows you the STI performance, and then the S&P 500 index in the black line. You can see the move here is pretty much in polar opposite here, where the S&P 500 index has give you a total return gain of around 150% since 1999, whereas on the opposite end, the STI is pretty underwhelming, pretty disappointing. If I were to say over the past 20 years, if you were to park your money in the STI, you are only just up 13%. So you can see that what disparity here in terms of being exposed within the US market as opposed to being exposed within the Singapore market. And then if you were to break it down in terms of apple-to-apple comparison on the annualized return kind of threshold benchmark, we can see the STI is pretty much in the red. If we were to break it down in different buckets, be it year to date, 3 years back or 5 years back. And then the S&P 500 index, the SPY, pretty much eking in a consistent return of around 10%, moving back 1 year, 3 years, 5 years on an annualized return perception. So again, you can see the US being the largest economy out there, being the world reserve currency out there, tends to be where the money is flowing into and tends to be where the growth sector is. And the chart and performance basically shows you a decent chart that's moving from bottom left to top right, which is what we would like to see in terms of having an investment portfolio, which in the long run hopefully can kind of return you an investment return of around 8 to 10% in the long run. So again, I guess that will be the benchmark that we'll be setting out for kind of getting into an investment ETF for the long run. Something like the SPY will give you a decent return of around 8 to 10% in the long run on an annualized perspective. And if you were to kind of look out for gaining data, or gaining an alpha or trying to beat the S&P 500 index, the broad-based market, there's actually other ways to actually beat the market. So NASDAQ 100 is the other way. And again, NASDAQ 100 is basically the go-to name for the technological sector in the US market. And NASDAQ 100 basically offers you the exposure to the top 100 international and domestic companies that are basically heavily exposed to the tech sector. And again, like I mentioned, there is no way you can actually get into the index itself, no direct way to begin with. So again, the easiest way, the low-cost way is to get into the ETF. So what we have here is this Invesco QQQ ETF offers you that avenue to actually get an exposure within this NASDAQ 100 index, and with only an expense ratio of 0.2% annually. And what we have noted here is the long-term return for NASDAQ 100, the tech sector, shows you an outperformance as compared to the S&P 500 index. So you can see in terms of trying to beat the 8 to 10% kind of a return for the S&P 500 index in the long run, the kind of a way to go is getting into the technological sector within the US market, QQQ, which I'll show you in the next slide. But again, when investing in a certain specific ETF, again, it's better to know what you're investing in. So the investment mandate is to track the Nasdaq 100 index, which is a technological sector. But in terms of top 10 holding, you can see Apple as well as Microsoft alone, it already holds more than 24% of the particular index. And then the rest of the particular holding within the ETF and the index is also pretty much tech-based, semiconductor, chip making, Intel, NVIDIA, Adobe, which does advertising, which does your Adobe Photoshop, licensing. You can see it's pretty much heavily skewed towards the technological side, which is also where the high growth sectors are. So again, during periods of the economic expansion, this is where usually where Nasdaq 100 tends to outperform in the early stage of this economic boom cycle, as well as when we are in this pro-cyclical wave where economic data are starting to expand, moving away from contractionary data to expansionary data. So I'll just show you the next slide where the return profile is like for the QQQ, the Nasdaq 100 as compared to the S&P 500 index. So you can see the blue line, the black line, basically shows you the return profile for the Nasdaq 100 as well as the QQQ. And then the red line shows you the benchmark that I've shown in the earlier slides, which is the US market proxy for the S&P 500 index. So you can see since July 2010, if you were to invest 10,000 within the S&P 500 index, the SPY, as of June of this year, your return will be around 37%. So that's around 3 times return. But if you were to invest in QQQ or the Nasdaq 100 index equivalent, you can see the return is almost slightly below 2 times of S&P 500 index. You're getting about $64,172, which is around 6 times. So that's the kind of return profile that this pro-cyclical growth sector is showing, the tech side of things. And the amount of, I would say, the alpha that the tech sector can give you if you're aligned within the right economic growth sector growth. And if we were to break down in terms of, again, to compare on the apple-to-apple comparison basis, looking at the annualized return, you can see since the fund inception, it's pretty much in line with the S&P at around 8% or so. But if you were to look back in terms of the more recent economic boom cycle, looking at 10 years back, 5 years back, 3 years back, and even 1 year back, you can see the annualized return is pretty decent, spending around 20 to 33%, showing you the kind of outperformance that the Nasdaq, the tech sector, can offer you. So just to sum up in terms of the performance moving back from top down, from a country perspective, S&P 500 index gives you the overall proxy, well-diversified portfolio if you want to get exposure in the US market, which then gives you an overall return of around 8 to 10% on a long-term basis annualized. But if you want to gain slightly higher return, which also comes with higher risk, QQQ, the Nasdaq 100 ETF, does offer you that particular option in terms of gaining that better return profile over here. And right now, I think moving on, something that's been booming recently within, I think, the past 2 to 3 years. And I think something that investors are actually kind of applying their money into is what we are seeing here, which is the thematic ETF, which is something that's slightly getting hotter these days. So these are actually the top performing ETF year to date. I've kind of highlighted two, ARK ETF as well as an online ETF, which basically tracks a certain theme over there. Not so much of a passive investment that tracks boring kind of an old school 500 stocks, 100 stocks kind of index, but instead this thematic ETF actually invests in a certain theme. For instance, the ARK ETF, ARK Innovation ETF, basically is an ETF that kind of invests in a company that's actually poised to profit from disruptive technology, such as artificial intelligence, DNA technologies, energy innovations, automations, fintech, so on and so forth, and including cloud computing, which has been actually hot these days. Like for example, the kind of IPO listing that we saw yesterday, Snowflake, kind of doing pretty well. Another cloud computing company that is again showing that market is getting interested in that next frontier of innovation. So what this ETF allows is it allows you to get an exposure into this set of companies that is actually looking out in terms of exploiting or moving into that growth sector. And again, this is an interesting ETF that is gaining a lot of traction recently, ARK ETF. And the reason why this expense ratio is slightly higher than the rest of the ETF out there at 0.75% is because this is not a passive index ETF. Instead, this ETF is actually an actively traded one, which means there is a fund manager that's behind it, actively tweaking and rebalancing this portfolio, which is why the expense ratio is slightly higher at 0.75%. But nonetheless, if you were to look in terms of the holdings here for the ARK ETF, you can see the number one holding is actually Tesla, which has been again gaining a lot of market insights, market interest over the past 3 months. And again, Tesla main story here is actually the electric vehicle, automation of driving, whereby one day we probably could see a automated driving taxi fleet that probably one day we wouldn't really need to own a car. And this self-driving fleet would actually kind of be self-sustaining with the solar panel, solar battery, electricity kind of a technology, where that will be the next frontier. And probably next time in the next world, what we see is probably a world that we see a fleet of self-driving taxi, maybe coming up from Tesla, driving us around without the need to actually own cars that are actually pretty much idle and inefficient per se. So we can see the other set of ETF or the companies that the ARK holding is actually holding is Invitae as well as CRISPR Therapeutic, companies that actually go into the forefront of starting into a medical genetics kind of a testing, which aims at kind of a cancer treatment as well as some of the other more illness kind of a set of things. So interestingly, this set of companies here are not really heavily tilted within the main index that we saw out there, such as the SPY, the QQQ, which is why you are seeing kind of a major outperformance here within the ARK ETF. And if we were to move to the next interesting ETF that are highlighted here, online ETF, basically ProShares Online Retail ETF. Another thematic, but this is a passive one, which is why the expense ratio is slightly lower at 0.58%. What this ETF does is allow investors to actually gain an exposure of growth of online retail, as well as investing in companies that actually sell online, as well as through other non-store brick and mortar kind of channels, as well as mobile and app purchases. So this ETF has actually been doing well over the past 3 to 6 months of us being in this kind of a COVID-19 pandemic where everyone is being stuck at home, where we are in this work from home kind of a scenario, this environment. We have actually been moving away from purchasing and shopping from shopping malls, retail outlets, and moving our spending habits to the online kind of side of things. So which is why we are seeing that particular kind of interest starting flowing into this online ETF, which invests in the list of stocks that are heavily tilted towards online consumption, online spending, and online ecosystem. So you can see here the top two holding here, Amazon, as well as Alibaba, which basically is a similar kind of thing as to Amazon. Good weightage of around 36% within these two major giants. And then the rest of the companies similarly is also heavily tilted towards the e-commerce side of things. Chewy, which is a online pet retail outlet in the US. eBay, Etsy, you can see it's also similar kind of online platform for e-commerce, selling things online. So again, that might be a bit sexy right now as we are still in this COVID-19 pandemic, as well as where most of us are still working from home. So we believe probably this set of ETF could continue to do well moving forward as the major uncertainty as to COVID-19, whether we get a vaccine or not, nobody knows. But probably the online spending habit that we have been kind of nurturing over the past 3 months will probably become the new normal, where this set of ETF will probably start to do that upcoming few weeks and months. And just to show you the stark difference in terms of performance for the NASDAQ 100 to the two ETF that I mentioned. So probably just throw your attention to this particular chart over here at the bottom. You can see the black line over here shows you the NASDAQ 100. And you can see this yellow region over here is basically showing you the recovery phase since COVID-19 bottomed out in terms of economic data, are slowly moving out into different stages of the reopening phases. What we saw was that Nasdaq did pretty well. 55% is not something to kind of call for, but you can see it's still pretty well. 55%, way better than the S&P 500 index as of August, since April. 55%, but if you were to try to kind of outperform Nasdaq 100, there's actually again other avenues to do so, and through this set of ETF, you can get exposure. You can see outperforming the Nasdaq 100 ETF. We have actually the online ETF, the ProShares one. You can see it actually performed a decent amount of 99% during the same time frame, and then try to outperform the online ETF that again gets an exposure to the e-commerce side of things and towards the online ecosystem. The UP ETF actually outperformed even better at 116%, and actually way more than double of what the Nasdaq 100 has actually been doing. So you can see over here, major outperformance here, green line, 100%, the UP ETF, followed by online ETF, up 9%, as well as the benchmark over here right now, which is being set relatively high, and Nasdaq 100 at 55%. So again, in terms of looking at asset allocation, in terms of looking at ETF, tracking ETF performance, there is always ways to kind of outperform the normal benchmark out there, such as a SPY, such as a STI index. The more popular ones right now would be thematic ETF, such as the UP online ETF, as well as the online ETF. And if you were to look in terms of the inception performance, you can see the online ETF is relatively new. Only began in 20 August, and you can see even since and the S&P Nasdaq 100 kind of being running. So if you were to look at how things are right now, the performance is still relatively decent, 26% since inception, which is similar to the online ETF. And if you were to look in terms of the different time horizon, 5-year mark, 3-year mark, 1 year out, the annualized return has actually been improving from 29% to 37% to 48%, showing you that slow interest into probably a whole new pro-cyclical side of things, whereby investors are starting to move into a world where they're expecting this new economic recovery phase of the pandemic, which is why the performance has been showing kind of a pickup here. And even you can see the past 3 months, the return has been even better as compared to the year to date and 1 year out. So if the investors are interested in looking out for something that's interesting, you can actually start adding this into a watch list. UP ETF as well as an online ETF. If you want to gain probably an edge in terms of probably outperformance to the underlying benchmark index, such as your Nasdaq as well as your S&P 500 index. And then moving on to the last 2 slides in terms of the ETF. So like I mentioned just now, in the types of ETFs page, we have different set of country ETFs. So here basically shows you the different set of country ETF out there that is being listed on a descending order based on the AUM. You can see there is a huge list of option out there in terms of where you can park your money, be it in the United States, be it in China, be it in Japan, or even Hong Kong and Singapore. But the key thing to note from this particular slide is you can see there is actually a huge variety of return profile out there from different set of countries. So if we were to just look at the year-to-date performance, you can see 2 key things stood out. United States, which is the world's largest economy, followed by China, which is the second largest economy out there, has been outperforming or being the market leader out there in terms of performance. US being up 8.5%, China being up 16.7% as of August closing price, has been kind of being the market leader as compared to the laggard over here. Unfortunately, it's the Singapore market, the STI. The G3B, you can see, is down 22%, and UK is also down 21%, mainly being plagued by the Brexit kind of ongoing shenanigan that is showing some sort of uncertainty within the UK economy. And then probably again, just to highlight, these are the set of ETF that allows you to actually gain an exposure, a diversified portfolio immediately by just investing in one unit of this ETF. You can gain an exposure to that particular country economy if you are interested in it. So probably something interesting to note from just the return profile from 3 years out, 1 year out, you can see China has been doing pretty well on this 3 year, 1 year, and year to date kind of horizon. I guess mainly because China being the ground zero for COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the first country to kind of move out from this particular pandemic and showing the earlier sign of this economic expansion and economic recovery. It's also the reason why we are seeing this Chinese ETF, iShares MSCI China ETF, MCHI, kind of outperforming the rest of the country ETF on a 3-year time frame, 1 year time frame, and year to date time frame kind of horizon. So just keep in mind, probably China is the one to watch right now, showing relative outperformance to the rest of the world. I believe we have 2 installments of the ETF seminar coming up next week, as well as the following week, that will kind of explain more in terms of the analysis within the Chinese market. So keep a close lookout for that. We will flash the details out later at the end of the slide. And moving back to the presentation, having the top-down kind of approach in mind from country-specific, and let's say if you have already kind of get your investment philosophy in place, being fixated that you want to be invested in the US market, because the US market has the longest track record in terms of showing positive returns on an annualized basis going back to 1990s for the S&P 500 index, as well as looking at the year-to-date performance. This set of ETF does show you another form of way to actually track or outperform the benchmark ETF, such as the SPY. So moving from country deeper down into sector performance, you can see I've listed around 11 sectors out there that's being broadly listed by the market here. What we see here is also another huge list of diverse performance here, moving from the tech sector all the way down to energy sectors. You can see the one that's outperforming again is your tech sector, basically Nasdaq 100 as well as XLK, which is another ETF that can give you the exposure to the tech sector. You can see year to date, the tech sector is already up 34% as compared to the other side of things, which is financials as well as energy, which is down respectively 18%, 40%. And the main reason for financial sector, your banks not doing really that well, is because right now we are in a kind of a globally suppressed zero interest rate environment, and that environment is here to stay for an extended period of time. So the NIM compression is kind of throwing in the negative outlook for your financial sector as well as bank sectors, which is why the performance has been pretty much in the red for year to date for the banks, as well as the energy sector being suppressed by the low oil prices that have been taken a hit year to date. So for investors that would like to kind of take a more active approach, someone that likes to kind of time the market in terms of calling when we are, where we are in terms of this economic cycle, where we are in expansion cycle or contraction cycle, probably you can look into this set of ETF. And for expansionary early growth sector, again, here are 3 sectors or 4 sectors to look out for. Number 1 will be the tech sector. Number 2 will be a consumer discretionary sector. Usually these 2 will be the one that will kind of outperform the market, as well as telecom, communication, as well as healthcare. And on the safe side, usually the REIT sector and the utility sectors will be the one that kind of act as a diversifier that kind of cushions the downside during periods of market uncertainty. So I'll run quickly through right now the diversification side of things, portfolio diversification, explaining everything you have to know already in terms of what an ETF is and what are the types of ETF. Right now, just explaining how you can employ ETF to actually achieve the diversification feature. So again, I've kind of offer 2 parts here. The normal standard one that you usually hear in terms of portfolio diversification for portfolio that's balanced is a 60-40 portfolio, which is 60% in equities and then 40% in treasury bonds. That's your normal kind of a standard kind of an all-weather portfolio. And then that will form the first part of the presentation here. But the second part, I kind of tweak the 40% safe haven kind of a portfolio, splitting it up into 20% treasury bonds and then 20% into gold. And then that will give you another interesting return profile here in terms of a 60-20-20 portfolio. That gives you, I think, in terms of our investor, that would be something that's more optimal, which I'll show you in a while. But basically, what we would like to do here in terms of a portfolio diversification feature using different set of ETF is to try to kind of reduce and minimize the volatility of your portfolio, especially during times of pandemic, during times of recession and crisis, which I'll show you in a while. And the asset class that actually offers that set of diversification is actually treasury bonds as well as gold. So key assumption over here from the very beginning that I would just like to lay out as probably for investors that would like to just park their money, long-term buy and hold, say more than 5 years out, long-term passive investment, remaining kind of a market neutral. A good way is actually to get into a 60-40 portfolio or 60-20-20 portfolio, which I'll lay on the following slide. But basically, the long-term assumption over here is what we have is a long-term return for the US market, which is the SPY. The S&P 500 index is consistently positive. Annualized return over here that we have actually studied is since 1990, the annualized return is around 8.4%. So that is the set of benchmark that we would like to have, long-term return 8.4%, going all the way back 30 years. And with that in mind, the other set of things that you would like to have is keep in mind that actually it's not really a smooth sailing ride, that the market just moves from the bottom left to the top right without gyration. So if you were to study history, historically, the market actually moves into period of crisis, moves into a period of recession, usually in between around 6 to 10 year kind of a horizon. So I've highlighted that in the chart over here. You can see here in year 2000, we actually saw the dot-com bubble where the S&P 500 index actually fell 46%. And then similarly, 8 years later, after the housing boom market kicked in and expired, you can see the global financial crisis, the S&P 500 index actually fell 52%. And even more recently, after a good around 12 years or so, somehow the market was being struck by the COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, you can see the market actually fell pretty sharply, 20% within a time span of around 1.5 months to 2 months. So again, the market does actually encompass a lot of potholes in between different time period as the economic expansion kind of expires and head into a period of weakness. So the reason why we want to actually encompass treasury bonds as well as gold into the portfolio is what we want to do is actually to smoothen out this particular downside and drawdown that we saw during this period of crisis. You can see negative 46%, negative 52%, and negative 20%. That's not something that we would like to see within our portfolio hanging around within a period of around 1 to 2 years. So the main objective for exposure within treasury bonds and gold is to help partially offset the losses during this period, because usually that inverse correlation there within the treasury bonds as well as gold usually plays pretty nicely over there. So right now, we'll just run through the risk profile here in terms of showing you the inverse correlation here. The long-dated ETF over here that we like to use to encompass here for gaining an exposure for the 60-40 portfolio, the 40 side of things is treasury bonds, TLT, which is long-term treasury bond that's maturity more than 20 years. You can see over here, the blue line is the TLT. You can see during periods of market sell-off, GFC, you can see the opposite happened within the TLT where we saw the TLT outperforming the market being up 13% when the S&P was down 52%. And similarly here during your COVID-19, you can see the TLT actually is up 21% when the S&P is actually down 19%. So that's the kind of return profile that we want to see, the inverse correlation. And that is also the reason why when you encompass this into the balanced portfolio, your return profile gets kind of a smoothened out. So keep in mind that's the inverse correlation that TLT offers treasury bonds long-term, US treasury bonds. And similarly for GLD, same thing over here. During the same period of a market turmoil, you can see the S&P is down 52% during 08 to 09. You can see GLD, gold is actually up 16%. And then on the other end, you can see during this current period of the pandemic, the market was down 20%. Even though the GLD don't really offer you that much upside as compared to TLT, which is up 21%. Nonetheless, it still offers you a positive gain of 2.6%, which by itself is really a kind of outperformance there. So again, for exposure for the other 20% side of things for the safe haven, GLD offers you the kind of exposure for giving you the safe haven harbor here in terms of getting an exposure within the ETF for gold prices. So keep in mind, TLT as well as GLD will be the ETF that will be employing for the 60-40 as well as the 20-20 portfolio. So here's the standard kind of long-term portfolio that usually people will have in mind. 60% in equity, which is in SPY, the proxy for the US market, and then TLT, which is the long-term treasury bond, long-term treasury maturity that's more than 20 years that will give you the kind of a safe haven diversified kind of a portfolio. This will be the portfolio that we'll be looking out for towards getting into a balanced portfolio. And from our backtest study, this returns around 4.5% annualized return in the long run. And this is the risk profile, return profile that we kind of did some back study. Return since 2002 annualized return is around 9.45%. You can see even though it didn't really beat the S&P 500 index at 9.4%, again, the main objective here for a balanced portfolio is to kind of smoothen out your risk profile. And what I mean by that is you can see the white line, which is the 60-40 portfolio. You can see the white line moves in a more kind of a smoothen out slope kind of a manner from bottom left to top right without really much sharp drawdown to the downside. And that can be highlighted here. Within GFC, you can see the 60-40 portfolio was only down 27% when the S&P is down 53%. So we actually minimize half of the maximum drawdown here during your GFC. And even similarly here during your COVID-19 sell-off where the S&P was down 19%, you can see the 60-40 portfolio also fell slightly less than half of what we saw in the benchmark market over there. So again, it shows you the diversified kind of feature that the bond offers you, where we actually smoothen out the risk profile. And again, in terms of the return wise, we pretty much achieve the same return profile as to just hanging on 100% to the SPY. So again, there is nothing to lose here in terms of splitting your portfolio into 60% S&P 500 index and then 40% into treasury bonds, which shows you a same return over the long run, but at the same time reduces your kind of risk profile, smooth out your risk return, and then actually increase your Sharpe ratio. So keep in mind that's the return that we see here in 60-40 portfolio. But when we actually kind of move slightly up from 60-40 portfolio into a 60-20-20 portfolio, where we divide the 40% treasury bonds into 20% treasury bonds and then 20% into gold, GLD. That's the proxy that we like to use, GLD. The annualized return gets improved slightly by 0.5% to 10% annualized return in the long run. So this will be the portfolio that will be kind of seeking out for, at least for a more optimal kind of return. 60% in SPY, 20% in your GLD, as well as 20% in TLT. And this forms your return profile. Similar kind of analysis here. But the only difference here is we actually managed to kind of get in a slightly higher return. So the 60-40 portfolio shows you an annualized return of around 9.5%. But while incorporating gold into the portfolio, we actually managed to get in a 0.5% higher return. And that by itself also shows you a slight major outperformance to the benchmark S&P 500 index, which is this white line over here. You can see the risk profile here is much more smoother here. Again, showing you the purpose of getting a diversified portfolio, where you can see the 60-20-20 portfolio is only down 25%, when the S&P was down 53% during GFC. And similarly, you can see during the COVID-19 pandemic, the 60-20-20 portfolio was only down 8.7%, while GLD was S&P was down 19%. But I think the key takeaway here is you can see by adding the gold into the portfolio, you can see the overall major outperformance as compared to the S&P 500 index, the orange line. You can see on the consistent basis, it has actually been outperforming the benchmark going all the way back to 2005. Pretty consistent. The only time it actually underperformed is in 2018 September. But since then, we've actually continued to outperform the benchmark index. So again, in fact, by incorporating gold into your portfolio, as well as a treasury bond, having more of a balanced portfolio, you can see the outperformance is definitely more consistent and at least more in the long run as compared to the previous 60-40 portfolio, where the outperformance of the 60-40 portfolio only happened during 08 to around 2017, and then some period of underperformance in 2017 to 2019. So more consistently, you can see the 60-20-20 portfolio shows you a more, at least, consistent outperformance profile, as well as a major outperformance return per se. So this is the kind of return profile that we like to seek out for, minimize the volatility and at least beat the index benchmark more consistently in the long run. And then last but not least, talking about the balanced portfolio, be it 60-40 portfolio or 60-20-20 split, when you are actually managing this portfolio yourself, rebalancing is one key thing to ensure that it's in place, being done in an annually or semi-annually basis, because when certain index or certain asset class move too far away or from its initial weightage, say for instance, the S&P 500 index starts to outperform the market by a good 20-30%, your weightage for the 60-40 split will actually be skewed towards probably around 65-35 split. So at every end of the year or every semi-annual, say end of June, when you assess the particular split there, when it's being kind of skewed and out of whack between the 60-40 split, what we want to do is actually sell some of the outperformer, say the SPY, and then buy more of the laggard, which is the TLT, if that outperformance is there, to make sure that the 60-40 split is moved back in place, and to make sure that the diversified feature of the safe haven assets such as treasury bond and gold stays in place. Okay, and last but not least, the market outlook. I'll just run quickly some of the market outlook and then summarize very quickly here. So right now, market outlook, be it in where we are right now, I believe we are in kind of an uncertainty period, but at the same time, this uncertainty is also meeting some sort of euphoria that we have been seeing at least over the past 2 months since we saw some V-shaped recovery. But nonetheless, we are seeing extreme valuation coming up from the US market in terms of unprecedented uncertainty from the COVID-19 pandemic. But at the same time, we believe this particular economic recovery could actually be something that is starting to head to its tail end, which is probably starting to see some sort of a market weakness, which I'll explain in a while. And I believe probably, at least if we will hold more of a view on the market moving forward, probably a better kind of a strategy to move forward to is be a bit more overweight within treasury bonds and gold, as we probably see some sort of a market correction within the equity market for the next 6 months. So first slide, I'll run through COVID-19 uncertainty. We have yet to pass or move away from COVID-19, and definitely not yet seeing a vaccine right now, but the market performance is actually kind of pricing in as though we are getting a vaccine for sure by end of the year. So that remains a question mark whether we get one vaccine by end of the year. And if we fail to get a vaccine by end of the year, that could actually throw in some tail risk within the equity market, at least in the near term, the next 4 to 5 months period. So keep that in mind. Vaccine remains a key thing. And then if you were to argue data for data, in terms of the infection number here, this is the daily infection curve on a global view. You can see the daily infection numbers are still rising day to day. And in fact, this number hasn't been updated. This has been taken as of last week. If we were to look at the more recent number as of yesterday, I think the infection numbers are spiking again somewhere near to around 340,000 high on a day-to-day basis. And as of the infection numbers, the total infection number has actually surpassed 30 million. And again, that is the key uncertainty as to whether probably will we be seeing some sort of a mutation. So that would be another black swan that nobody knows. But if the mutation kicks in, that would be another severe panic sell-off probably that will be kicking into the market, as well as if we were to fail to meet the expectation of getting a vaccine by end of the year. And then on the economic front, major economic fiscal stimulus from the US, most of them has actually expired in July, mainly talking about the economic employment support from the government side of things. So with the stimulus kind of waning off, probably consumption will start to drop, and that will affect the economic recovery moving forward. So this is also the slide that I talk about in terms of probably a reasoning why moving forward we will see a period of a weakness within the economic growth within the US rather than a V-shaped recovery. So you can see this is the CT Economic Surprise Index, which basically measures the broad-based economic data coming out from the US on a surprise basis. So when you have the index start to move up, what it tells us is on a broad-based economic data, the data is actually surprising to the upside as compared to the consensus. So you can see since April, this particular index has been spiking pretty nicely, higher to new euphoric high. But nonetheless, this V-shaped recovery kind of supports the euphoric move within the equity market in the US side of things. But nonetheless, just to highlight how this particular index works is because if you were to look, this index moving all the way back to 2003, this index hardly stays above 79.5, this red line, for long. And usually once it takes anything above that 79.5 high, usually it will go through a period of mean reversion. And once it goes through a period of mean reversion, you can see it's actually moving in a period of weakness for at least a period of 6 months or more. And henceforth, that brings us to where we are right now, being at a kind of a euphoric high, 246 recently in August, and then starting to see some sort of slowdown. Probably this could be the start of this mean reversion as to what we have been seeing over the past few years. And if this relationship does kind of hold true, probably the next 6 months will see a period of weakness rather than what we have actually saw since April to August. So that would actually probably throw in some headwind that the market is right now not factoring in, because everyone is still factoring in a pretty green shoot kind of recovery moving forward until the end of the year. So keep that in mind. This indicator is probably telling us there might be some uncertainty coming in the near term. And then last but not least, probably throwing you up some market valuation view, at least on a top-down basis. You can see the S&P 500 index forward PE right now, it's actually surpassed what we saw in the dot-com high of 26.7, where that happened in December of 1998. As of August, we actually saw this forward PE hitting a high of 26.8, which is the highest point, even higher than the dot-com high. So right now, valuation seems pretty stretched. But at the same time, it doesn't really mean that with this high valuation, the market will kind of enter into a bear market immediately. Good argument is you can see, even though the dot-com period, where the S&P forward PE actually hit a high of 26.7 in December 98, the S&P actually only topped out 2 years later. So again, the euphoria can actually stay longer than expected. So nobody knows exactly when probably the valuation will kind of a mean revert, but just keep that in mind. Right now, valuation seems to reach. And then similarly, if you were to look at the Buffett indicator, which measures the total US market cap to GDP ratio in the US, again, it's at the highest point, even higher than dot-com. Dot-com high was at 1.36, which is what it means is that the total market cap of the US was 136% higher than the total market cap of the whole US GDP economy. So right now we're talking about high of 163%, way more than the US GDP, again showing you extreme valuation. So right now, valuation definitely in the US seems stretched, but again, this euphoria could actually stay longer than many can kind of expect. So what it means is, in the long run, conclusion is, if you were to stay market neutral, again, like I mentioned, market neutral being buy and hold, being in the market vested for a good 5 to 10 years kind of horizon, then probably the optimal portfolio, the balanced portfolio that investors should be looking out for, is to get into a portfolio that has this constituent whereby we are talking about 60, 20, 20 kind of a split, where we are talking about 60% within the equity exposure, the US market SPY, and then the rest of the 20% within treasury bonds through TLT, and then the other half of the 20% within GLD as a safe haven bet to kind of get you at least decent return in the long run, 5 to 10 years time, return of at least around, I would say 8 to 10% annualized return. And then that will kind of give you at least a good, I would say, sleep safe kind of investment in the long run. But for those that would like to have a more aggressive bet on the economic recovery, then probably you can actually split the 60% split in equity into something that is riskier, such as the tech sectors in the US, QQQ, the Nasdaq 100, or even the two more recently outperformer here, the UP ETF as well as the online ETF, for more aggressive investors. And then last but not least, for investors that have more of a bearish view, that is more conservative, thinking that extreme valuation cannot last and some of the market outlook just thrown out can actually start to see some market correction, then probably you could actually underweight the 60% and start overweighing the TLT and GLD pie to something more of like 30% split, and then reducing the equity exposure to 40%. So that is some ways that investors can kind of look up to in terms of strategizing their portfolio moving forward, be it in a balanced way or more aggressive way or more conservative way. And last but not least, just to end off, for those that would like to be more interested in ETF, here are two useful sites that you can actually use, ETF.com or ETFDB.com, which basically shows you almost all the information you need to know for any ETF that you are interested in. Just Google them and hit them to this website. It will just show you the investment TCs, investment objective, expense ratio, tracking error, top 10 holding for the ETF that you're interested in. And that will give you a good summary of what the ETF is all about. Yeah, and with that, I've come to the end of today's webinar. Hopefully you'll find this useful. Right now, we'll just stop a while for Q&A, and hopefully I can try to answer any questions.